and the Commission on Academic, Student, and Community Development. Dr. Pollard is a member of the Equity Advisory Board for Mission Partners and the Center for First Generation Student Success Advisory Board for the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators. She also serves on the board of directors for the American Association of Community Colleges and as the president of the American Association for Women in Community Colleges. Locally, she also serves on the board of Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, Universities at Shady Grove, the Montgomery County Advisory Board of the Greater Washington Community Foundation, and the Consortium of Universities of the Washington Metropolitan Area. Dr. Pollard was named one of Washington's 100 Most Powerful Women by Washingtonian Magazine, won a 2017 Academic Leadership Award from the Carnegie Corporation of New York, and was recipient of a Visionary Award by the Washington Area's Women's Foundation. Additionally, she has been honored by Leadership Montgomery, the Daily Record, Bethesda Magazine, and the Washington Business Journal, and is a proud member of Zeta Phi Beta. So I would like to invite Dr. Pollard to take the floor, take the podium.
Well, good morning, everyone. Absolutely delighted to be here with you today. I'm going to share my screen if so possible. You all have my presentation. Thank you. And I'm going to share with you a few ideas that I hope will resonate with the audience today. Let me say I'm honored and deeply humbled to be here today. And I want to thank you for your prescient work as a collective. You saw the future before it was here. In fact, if you are a hockey fan, you may have heard the quote from Wayne Gretzky when he says that he is great because other players skate to where the puck is, where his strength and how he defined himself as a hockey player is because he skated to where he thought the puck would be. I think that Quality Matters has been skating in the space of quality online instruction and learning for some time now. And I'd say that you've connected with the puck pretty impressively, judging for what I'm hearing in the education circles that I travel in. In fact, QM skated to where the puck was going to be long before many realized the trajectory of online education. The focus on quality in learning goes far beyond easy metrics. In fact, although I know that your foundational rubric and processes are rigorous, I also know that the impact of QM has been on learning, and it takes an important national conversations about access and equity to a whole new level when you combine these issues together. As you all know, the essence of learning goes beyond those quantifiable metrics to lived experience, because education is ultimately about experience. And for those of us who are ardent believers, it's also really about dignity. Now, as a leader of an institution where 75% of our student body is either brown or Black, I understand that dignity matters. For first generation college students, many of whom I know, dignity matters for them as well, because we understand that when half of all Pell Grant students at my institution live in families earning less than $25,000 a year, dignity matters. When we see images of police violence on the news and so many of the victims are people of color, dignity matters. So when my college distributed $850,000 in emergency aid during the first 3 months of the pandemic, so the students could pay for internet connections and laptops they didn't have at home, access to quality education is about dignity. For those students, staying in school means that they have the chance to grow out of a service job, wait staff, retail clerk, a grocery store worker, and qualify for middle skill jobs. The difference between salaries for high school graduates and those who have earned a college degree from a community college in particular can add up to $1 million a year, more when you add on baccalaureate and other degrees. So I can't tell you how many letters that I've received as a college president saying, thank you for helping me stay in school. I could not have done it without you. That's when we see that someone's lived experience can be transformed by education. Education can give a person the dignity of work, that allows them to thrive, but not just struggle. And that's truly important. That's when quality really matters. Now, I use the word dignity here because I believe we're really experiencing two pandemics in our nation. The first, we're all very familiar with, of COVID-19, and has transformed the way we think about everyday life. In fact, it's done so dramatically. But there has been profound inequality in the impact on people's lives. Where I work in Maryland, for example, people of color make up about 31% of the population, but they are almost about 50% of the fatalities from COVID-19 infection. Now, that's clearly related in my mind to income inequality, access to robust health care, and the number of people working service jobs and taking public transportation that puts them at higher risk. There's a larger socioeconomic dynamic behind this very real biological virus that makes the impact on people's lives dramatically different. In higher education spaces, COVID has indeed impacted education of low-income folks and many people of color disproportionately. Nationwide, 12 million American undergraduates attend one of approximately 900 community colleges, and about 45% of undergraduates in this country are enrolled in a community college, 45%. Just to show you how much economic stress they've experienced, though, 58% of these students have reported pandemic-related basic needs and security in a Temple University study it was taken this summer. Now, on top of this, our country has also been experiencing awakening around racial inequality recently. Some of it centered around police violence. I say awakening because this is not a new pandemic and it's not a new injustice. It's just being recorded on cell phones each and every day, and it's being placed in front of us, many of us, for the first time. For many folks who haven't experienced racism personally, I think the national protests have been eye-opening. For my students, though, the protests have been empowering on one level, but also extremely stressful. They've watched the recording of people who look like them seemingly being killed by police over and over again on a daily basis. I hear from our students about how anxious this makes them. As the mother of a teenage son, I live with this anxiety in a way that I've never lived before. And even in the midst of these protests, as many mothers do, I think that we're all living in a fear. Whether you're a mother or a father or a young person of color, all of this starts to erode our sense of dignity. And that's why Montgomery College has made radical inclusion a foundational principle of our mission. We believe that in some profound way, it's our obligation to live this truth, this maxim in everything that we do. We're loud about our support for Dreamers and for DACA recipients, and that's Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. We're intense in our financial support for students who are living in poverty. And we talk openly about the microaggressions and other barriers that many people feel that are when they're not fully a part of a community. We talk actively with our local police department about how to interact with diverse communities. And we talk to them about how to help undocumented folks live safely. Living without fear, having enough food to study, being able to pay your rent, even though you've lost your service job. These are the building blocks of educational opportunity in this current moment. Since so many of our students live at the nexus of these stressors, my institution has to focus on the whole student experience. Now, I think there's a tight connection here in the work of Quality Matters in generating quality educational experiences. In fact, the work of QM, Invest in Equity and Educational Experiences, is even more vital now today. Inclusion is not some abstract liberal doctrine. It's the lived experience of more and more students in society today. It's a desired lived experience. Yet it has been accelerated by COVID, but it has already been thriving before this pandemic. Let me show you what it looks like at Montgomery College. First, I'm going to borrow the words of a guest speaker who was at our campus recently who said, "Plexiglass won't save us." Jess Salingo, who wrote in the article in July for the Chronicle of Our Education, had a title of an article the same in this. And he said that he was referring to higher education's scramble for the tools that allow us to come back to in-person learning. Well, my college was among the first and the few that understood this very early on. We know that we should instead put our energies into preparing teachers for online instruction. And we had a few advantages working for us. First of all, Montgomery College is a founding member of Maryland Online Consortium, which provided online education for 2- and 4-year schools. We also were earlier recipient of a FIPSE grant in 2003, which helped start QM at our institution. So the 23 essential standards are common parlance at Montgomery College. And we have full-time instructional developers on each of our 3 campuses, but they guide our faculty in doing their QM work. Unlike many of our 4-year counterparts, we don't have resources to have designers who do all the work. Our faculty do double time, and QM standards are valuable guides. In an average semester, we offer 57 courses that have been certified by QM. And this fall, we're offering a total of 517 sections online. That's up 28% in a year. The college has 5 fully online degrees so that working adults can complete them at their own rates of time. Our degrees in general studies, criminal justice, business, computer science, and early childhood education are essential in today's labor market. And this is another element of community colleges that we're unique for. Our average age of our student is 27, and many of our students are returning to get skills they could never afford when they were younger, or are reskilling after job loss. At one point during the COVID this spring, unemployment rates in Maryland was at 10%, which boosted our summer enrollment significantly. But the demand for online learning, even before COVID, was growing exponentially. So with a surge in demand, the college had to quickly implement several measures. In each of our online classes, we had to build accessibility into it by using an assessment tool called Ally. This allows faculty to see how their courses might not be fully accessible to students with disabilities, such as a hearing or visual impairment. We had fortunately, though, already been using open educational resources or OERs for several years. This means the students don't have to pay for, or they pay a minimal amount for textbooks in our courses. But they can use online resources as well, potentially saving each student up to $1,500 for a semester. And we received a grant from the Achieving the Dream Foundation to pilot this. And now we have an entire range of courses called Z courses in our registration, which requires no textbooks at all. This fall, we're offering 562 sections of Z courses with about 10,000 seats in those courses. So using Quality Matters design principles, Ally for Accessibility, and OERs, Montgomery College was a forerunner in virtual learning. We also had to turn quickly to our faculty. We have about 1,600 faculty in total, both full and part-time, and we had to upscale them into structured remote teaching. This required getting the right technology to them and the right instructions. Over the summer, 750 of our full and part-time faculty participated in a required 7-week course in structured remote teaching so that we were assured that our quality was consistently high. We were fortunate to have our Office of E-Learning Innovation and Teaching Excellence, or ELITE as we like to call it, through which we could implement these resources. And our Vice President for ELITE is Dr. Michael Mills, who many of you know who's on the QM Board of Directors and the Maryland Online Board of Directors. So Montgomery College was well positioned. Despite all of these advantages though, students still got lost. In March, when our instruction went virtual, about 800 students didn't show up in our new virtual spaces. And by calling them one by one and coaching them through the process for several of our technology vouchers and emergency funding for Wi-Fi, we got about 400 of those students back in classes, and they're continuing to be enrolled this semester. And by the way, this was a good lesson for us to use in the direct educational impacts of the digital divide. A lot of public schools have learned this the hard way. Having internet connections is not just about television anymore. It's about a generation of young people and the skills they need to be job ready. In the first few weeks of the pandemic, we had students driving to our parking lots or garages of our closed campuses to sit in those empty spaces in their cars and to use our Wi-Fi in order for them to keep up with their schoolwork. A survey of our GED students told us that 47% of those students were continuing their studies toward their GED on their phones because they did not have laptops. You hear that? On their phones. So of the remaining 400 students who never reappeared that we lost in March when we went to remote instruction, most were living so close to the edge that they didn't have time for school anymore. Of our working students, 41% of them lost a job as a result of COVID. So they were out looking for new jobs to pay the bills, to pay the rent, to ensure they had food on the table for them and their families. We had students who had multiple school-age children themselves who were so distracted by childcare when the public schools closed down to keep education going for them, didn't even seem like it was a possibility. They were focused on their children and the basic skills that they needed to have in order to do that. It reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy. How can one ever reach self-actualization when you're hungry? When you're worried about where you're going to sleep, when you're worried about keeping utilities on, you're worried about your next job. And then we had our undocumented students who were not eligible for any of our CARES funding. Those are grants that came from the federal government to students, which was called the Coronavirus Relief and Economic Stability Funds. So we had to connect them with emergency funding from our canceled commencement budget, as well as many donor resources. In some ways, my college's transition to remote instruction had both internal and external features. Externally, there were logistical questions that we had to answer about how to ship laptops to students and how to process CARES payments quickly for those students. For students who still needed food, we had to set up drive-by contactless food distribution lines. Internally, though, the culture of quality matter standards, which was championed by a small but mighty and robust group of faculty, became more important now than ever. Teaching has become about making the virtual learning experience one that minimizes inequity. Our cadre of QM faculty have become evangelists for infusing equity in online teaching. Our faculty's Blackboard suite of components, including Collaborate, Ultra, and Zoom embedded. Our instructional designers are coaching faculty about how to make their courses user-friendly and to serve students with disabilities. We've even opened a conversation about moving toward universal design. Our wider faculty brings some special knowledge, though, to this work and keeping conversations about closing the achievement gap, even those of little experience in online teaching. What they do contribute is a deep knowledge of cultural competence in the traditional classroom. They're well versed in the nuances of the pre-pandemic environment and understood the achievement gap for what it was. They were aware of the instructional nuances that can worsen an academic achievement gap. And that's where you come in. The new achievement gap created by the digital divide and related quality issues is real, my friends. It may not show up for years, and that's what scares us the most, but the impact of suboptimal learning and students' progress is significant, and we have got to call it out now. As experts in this field, your perspective is particularly unique, and you have an authority that needs to be recognized and heard. Now, I'm told by Michael Mills that the reports of the changing landscape of online education have already been tracking this. So yet again, QM is out in front. One thing I want to emphasize is the need to close the achievement gap among our instructors. Some of them have excellent academic credentials and background and expertise that's unrivaled in their discipline, but they are caught at a crossroads of experience with technology oftentimes. They will need to cross this gulf. And at Montgomery College, for example, we've had some very more tech-savvy faculty who have agreed to mentor less experienced faculty during the transition to remote instruction. It has built relationships and camaraderie in our departments and was one of the great resources during this very stressful time. It is a success for us as an organization. Now, my charge to you, if I could offer a call to action to you, is that in this field, we need you to take your role so seriously. The digital divide is more than just about internet connections. It's about well-trained faculty behind those connections. It's about instructional design that inspires engagement. It's about presentations that students with all kinds of learning styles can use. It's about growing an awareness of our students' socioeconomic conditions. Those of you who know anything about civil rights history may remember that racially segregated schools were once justified by this phrase, separate but equal. This notion was struck down by the Supreme Court in the landmark decision of Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954. This was a turning point in public education. The court said, quote, "The quality of education is so fundamentally uneven in segregated schools that it is now prohibited." Let me say that again to you because I think you should see how it resonates now in 2020. The quality of education is so fundamentally uneven in segregated schools that they are now prohibited. As we enter into our 8th month of remote public education in this country, your voices about the quality of online education and instruction and learning matters now more than ever. It is essential in this moment. Let us not replicate the separate but equal dynamic that you can see in an online environment. Let's give everyone the dignity of learning virtually with the same tools and with the same high quality. As you speak out, I want to encourage you to share your learning real time. Don't wait. Now, I often tell my staff, we're building the plane while we're flying it, so hold on, put your seatbelt on, but also start tinkering with the engine a little bit. In April of this year, I wrote an article for Inside Higher Education about leading through this pandemic crisis. We were only 1 month into it, so I still had a lot of learning to do. But I had some solid principles in there that I want to share, so I did that. And we're all about building online education plane while we're flying it right now. We're all in the midst of this. So you may not believe you have all the answers. None of us do. But you're better equipped more than anybody else in this organization is to lead on this topic the most. In fact, we need guidance for emerging questions that we're grappling with right now on our college campuses. What should camera policies be? This is the #1 issue I hear right now among students about online cameras and having them on or having blackened faces. I hear this from faculty talk about how discouraging that is. How can we best support faculty with limited technology experience? How will synchronous hybrid classes work when some return to physical classrooms or others in remote spaces? How does cultural competence impact instructional design issues? And here's one that just came to me this morning. How do we ensure that some students are not left behind in the midst of this evolution that we're having right now? Have a Post-it note on my computer screen that I look at every day, and it says, this is not a transition, but an evolution. You are also uniquely qualified to call for more governmental investment in online education and the infrastructure to support it. Technology education and access should be a part of public education. We need consistent standards across online education, best practices both in course design and in course delivery. You have the authority in this space, so I encourage you to use it. And as you do this, I will be doing similar work in the spaces that I travel. We need larger federal investment in community college education. Enrollment is down about 20% nationwide, and this is undoubtedly due to the pandemic, and we see the effects of that, of loss of income, of employment stress. Now I'll be calling the federal government to revise the CARES Act formula, which currently disadvantages community college students. If you recall, I shared with you that my college lost about 400 students in March. This fall, our enrollment was down about 6%, which is roughly 1,500 students. If each of the 900 community colleges loses a comparable amount, that could be up to 500,000 students that are lost in this pandemic. 500,000. That's a lot of potential loss. And I will offer to you, we can't afford for that to happen. When our nation has faced other historical crises, we turn to investments in education, specifically higher education, to help us get through this. In 1944, the GI Bill grew out of World War II and trained millions of returning soldiers. In 1965, the Higher Education Act was also a bridge out of the Vietnam War and a tension of the Civil Rights era. The answer was the Pell Grant and Stafford loans, a fundamentally democratizing move that gave low-income folks the dignity to enroll in college. With our contemporary economy sputtering and unemployment higher than any recent era, we need a federal investment in the dignity of our communities. Community colleges are the place to do that. We are uniquely positioned in our communities and are attentive to their needs. This is a picture from about 2 years ago when we partnered with the local Ethiopian Community Center to serve their students. We now produce our enrollment material in Amharic and in addition to 6 other languages. The quality of our work matters in our communities. In that sense, we share an orientation that QM has to standards, to accessibility, and certainly to progress. Higher education and K-12 have the potential to dive more deeply into the raising of the bar for all students. Now, these are some of our middle school students in Montgomery County who enrolled in our free computer coding class program this summer. They had the ability to make quality instruction and make it affordable through high concentrations of effort by our faculty and our staff within our organization. And as support becomes more available, we know that we can do more in this time of the pandemic. Let's rise to the challenges and respond in this crisis, by addressing inequality, by bringing quality to focus. Let's protect the dignity of our students through high quality, transformational education, and certainly make sure that these educational experiences are ones that will help build the futures that we need to have. This really isn't an option. It is necessary work. It is work that each of us can do together. And I thank you for your extraordinary work that QM has been doing all along. Thank you for letting me have this time with you today. And if we have time, I'm happy to respond to questions or allow you all to move further into your dialogue. Thank you.
I would say thank you very much, Deb. Do you have, there are a couple of questions. I don't know whether to throw the mic back to you or to just ask, there's one question: who created and facilitated the structured remote training, instructional designers, administration, faculty, or a contract company? This came probably early in your talk.
Sure, it was a combination of our faculty working with our elite areas. I described elite, where we have instructional designers, and we also have faculty associates and staff associates who work in that area. And we've had a robust group of faculty that have been led for the last couple of years, Professor Shinta Hernandez, who has done significant work working with our faculty to help start it really doing significant work around remote instruction, but in particular, that work had been OERs. And what was very powerful about that we had built this cadre of faculty who were already starting to look deeply into this work of online instruction. And they seamlessly transitioned their work into being very deliberate with our elite team to start delivering. So they designed within a month the structured remote instruction program. They executed it. And what was interesting about that, the participants had mentors in the program as well, who worked with them to provide the instruction. And it was significant. It was a lot of work. I read the evaluations, and the faculty talked about the fact that, one, they had this robust training that our elite instruction developers delivered, and they had these mentors who walked side by side with them. But here's the beautiful part: they didn't abandon them. So when the fall started, a number of the faculty who still felt uncertain about this, they've been able to stay connected with our elite training. And my understanding is that we'll be delivering this training again. So we did not have contractual trainers. What I think is important, though, and I tried to capture in my comments here, is that we have been on a journey, a trajectory within the organization that allowed for us to be prepared to transition. It was a lot of work in that. So this idea of faculty development is so essential. I started a good portion of my early part of my career was in faculty development. And we forget the fact that while I had deep competence, I had a few degrees in English literature and writing, I knew how to teach writing. I thought that I was able to do that very effectively. But what we realized is that faculty development kept me engaged around emerging pedagogy. It helped me understand the importance of how I can improve as a faculty member. And then when you add on the need for expansion in the terms of technology, faculty development, I think, is the secret sauce of organizations such as my own that have been at the forefront of pioneering in some of these spaces. If you don't invest in your people, if you don't put the resources with them, I'm not just talking about giving them a keyboard and technology to work, it is about giving them coaches and instruction. That to me is essential. So that's how we did it at Montgomery College.
So Dr. Pollard, this is Deb Adair, and I do have a question for you. I did put it in the chat, but Jim was nice enough to to let me do both and speak it out loud. So just this morning, there was an opinion post in Inside Higher Ed by Liliana Rodriguez, and it was called "The Cost of Silence." And in that, she was taking exception with finding fault with higher education for the rising cost of education. In other words, that higher ed has picked up the load where federal and state policy has failed. And so she ends this post with, "If our goal is to educate the American public equitably and improve access to education, we need a nation that provides equitable services and incomes to its people. Until then, higher education will be tasked with it all." So my question to you is, we know quality online design and instruction requires investment in people and learning resources, just what you said. How do you see us, QM and its community that's focused on quality, making the case about what students really need to be successful and the imperative for policymakers and leaders to provide it? Who do you think needs to hear that? And why do you think they'll listen to us?
Well, I think there has to be a triangulated approach. I think one of the things that I often fault us in higher education is that we tend to speak to one audience. That might very well be the same with QM. You all have deep competence and you tend to speak to the choir. We all do that. That's our comfort space. That's the group that we know. But I think if we want to look at any sophisticated effort to have any type of substantive change movement, you have to, one, articulate the felt need. You have to capture that felt need. And then you have to be able to then differentiate that message to multiple people. So this idea of being able to say, who do we talk to? You need to be talking to everybody. You need to be doing loudly and intentionally using the tools of your craft. You know how to design instruction. Certainly you should be able to how to design effective messages. There are messages that you will have to be giving to administration about coming up with reasonable pathways that are effective in terms of cost, but also things that speak to the issue of completion, success, experience. So that's certainly one set of messages you'll have to deliver. You'll also have to have a set of messages to the faculty themselves. How do you begin to talk to faculty colleagues about what they're doing in a way not to make them feel defensive and make them feel like they're relics because they're being left behind, but to talk about the evolving nature of pedagogy. You keep in mind, most faculty who are teaching who have a master's degree or doctorate degree in a discipline may or may not have, probably have not taken, if more than two, unless they're in an education program, have taken a lot of courses about education. So this idea of talking with them about how you take your content of your discipline and marry that with the science of how people learn, combined also thirdly with the science of how you do that oftentimes and with technology, you start to create your value statement to this particular group. So that's administration, if we want to say that. There's faculty, but then there's also to the legislature and to those elected people who make investments in higher education. Talking about the evolving nature into, even as I try to do in my speech, historically, we've done different things to be able to designate and look to higher education to help solve those needs. So if there's a way to be able to think about how you design a message, to talk about those major tropes that are important to those folks who are listening in the elected spaces. Talking about the economy, talking about the fact that we're leaving people behind, talk about the fact that we're trying to blend a nation again. That's part of the challenge right now. We looked at education to do that. Why not look at education to do that now? Then also talk to these technology companies. They listen to you all probably more than they'll even listen to me because you know the technologies, you understand the platforms. How do they start to translate their messages in ways that resonate across these audiences? And here's the last one that I think that we need to talk to more and that we simply don't do because it's a certain amount of paternalism. Why don't you empower students to talk about quality? Why don't you think about how you talk to students about what they should expect from the institutions that they're enrolled in and how for them to assess? Wouldn't it be interesting to have a student bill of rights or students a checklist? I'm going to take this online course or structured remote instruction at this particular institution. But here are 10 things you should look for, or here's a guide to help you be successful. I think we've got to learn how to triangulate our messages in spaces where people are going to be our biggest fans, spaces where people are not going to understand what we do, and spaces where people who are literally fearful of what the message is going to be because they're worried about the implication for themselves. That to me is where that space, and you all have the ability to do that. You're not selling something. You're not trying to tell people that what they're doing is wrong. What you're doing is giving them a picture of where we are right now and where things are going. And I think that speaks a lot about what can happen and should be happening in terms of advocacy and awareness building. And I think you're uniquely primed to be able to do that. Everyone right now is talking about this issue, but what we haven't reconciled is how to deliver upon it in a time, as was cited, of resource scarcity. It is a matter of prioritizing, and it's a matter of trying to find those people who say, okay, I want to make these investments, but help them understand how to make those investments wisely. We use, for example, a portion of our CARES funding directly for faculty development. We certainly pushed more than half of it to students, but we knew it was both the short game and the long game. How do we be prepared for those students when they came back to us this fall? Because we made the decisions early about what it was going to look like in terms of instructional delivery at our institution. So that's a long answer to a short question.
But it was a great answer. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim, I know you have a couple more questions for Dr. Pollard.
Yes, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in. I will ask. There were a couple other questions posted. One, the digital divide and the socioeconomic barrier doesn't only affect students. Adjunct faculty are also are often in similar positions. How does your college address these inequities between full-time faculty and adjunct faculty?
Yeah, I think this is a very astute observation. I meant to actually say something about that in my speech, because the reality about this is that what became glaringly obvious for us, and I'm gonna speak for my community college spaces. I don't know what this is like at oftentimes at four-year institutions who are oftentimes far better resourced than we are at community colleges. But the reality for this is that we thought, and here's a dirty little secret, all of us were focusing on community colleges, right? I mean, our students. We're saying, hey, we know that they're hungry. We know they don't have access to technology. They don't have Wi-Fi. Many of them are using these phones, and they don't even have, a 10. They, working on a 7 or 6 or whatever the case may be. So let's talk about what the reality is about that. What became very obvious to us at our college early on is that when we told employees you're going to be working remotely, we started getting calls from folks saying, how are we going to be able to support you? So you know what we did? We provided technology. We went into all of our classrooms. We had laptop labs, these mobile marks. We took those out. We had computers that were preparing to be installed in different places on campus. We took those out and we gave them we're lending them to employees right now. Because the reality is that if I want you to be able to deliver that work at home, you can't do that if you don't have the technology. And it's not just the issue of part-time faculty and full-time faculty, it's also staff. Quiet as it's kept as some of our lower level administrators as well, who may not have had the technology. So we spent our own resources doing that. And then we also got our foundation to help us. We realized if we need to be doing this for employees, can we get our foundation to help us? So our foundation, so we have had about $900,000 that we took out of our own college budget and out of our foundation to provide direct resources to employees and to our students. And here's the other thing that happened with this. Our faculty union, our staff union said, how can we also help? So they came into the process providing those resources. Are we still struggling? No doubt about that. In fact, I just saw the other day, outside of technology, we did a computer chair, because we also, many of you know about the ergonomics, right? So we have folks who may be able to have the technology at home, but they're sitting at a dining room table or a kitchen counter, unsustainable. So we did a drive-by, come and pick up your office chair if you had one. I do think that there continues to be a disparity between full and part-time faculty as it relates to probably this technology issue. And that's something that's going to have to be solved as more and more, particularly community colleges, are dependent upon part-time faculty for the delivery of instruction. So this again goes around another issue that QM could be elevating. One of the things that sometimes is often useful for us is to have an outside person amplify internal messaging that we may not be aware of or may not sometimes have the courage to say. So these are things that I think another space where QM could be useful in helping us to do that. That's how we've tried to do it at Montgomery College. Do I think we might still have some gaps? Possibly, but we have met almost every request that's come to us by our employees, full and part-time faculty and staff. And then certainly with our students, we've done the same thing and had donations that came in. We had a lot of local businesses that donated technology so that we could advance that. It doesn't help because the other part is that I can give you a laptop or I can give you a computer to use at home. But the reality is if you don't have access to the internet, that becomes another burden. So we did provide a lot of MiFi thingy bobbies. We also work with our local internet providers in the area. We put it on our website to help them understand how to access low-cost broadband and other resources. But again, this goes back to that digital divide that we're going, and this is what lawmakers need to be addressing. We really need to have a substantive conversation about the infrastructure of a country. If I'm telling this in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is one of the wealthiest communities in the country, I can only imagine what that means in areas that are less affluent and have less connectivity than we do.
Thank you. We have about 3 minutes left. I think you might have even answered this question already, though, with your last question. How did you all at Montgomery College ensure that your message of ensuring everyone was equipped to provide quality instructions to students was being communicated to the populations at each institutional level?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question, because one of the things that we prided ourselves on during this pandemic has been our communication. I have a very large organization, 55,000 students, over 3,000 employees on 3 campuses. We are highly complex. I'll also offer that we're right outside of Washington, D.C., so we make everything even more complex than it needs to be. We are an organization that takes pride in making sure that we are meeting the needs of so many populations of students. But if you don't know this, how do we get this information to you? So we've done a lot of things. First and foremost, and I want to put this out because I think it's important, we've had a set of guiding principles. I think a week into this, I sat down at this very desk I'm at right now and drafted a set of guiding principles and took them to my senior team and said, let's think about how we're going to approach this work, and then also developed a set of assumptions that will guide us through this process. And if you ever want to see these, you can go to Montgomery College, www.montgomerycollege.edu/resilientmc. And on there was our plan. We came up with a plan to address these issues. And part of that was high communication. And that meant in every level of the organization, we created message boards. We had multiple websites. I started sending out communications that I've maintained now 3 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with the Friday one always typically a video where we would talk about from my office here in my pseudo space, workspace, and talk about what was happening within the college, a message designed for employees as well as students. We also started using other platforms, Facebook Live. We do a conversation with leadership so we can make sure people have the information. Students, I'm on Twitter, very active on Twitter. Students will send me messages there. I dabble, probably not as effectively, in Instagram and some other platforms. So I think that it's really, really important for us to think deliberately about communication, because in this time and age, there are so many platforms, so many things that are out there, but the key is about the message. And that's what I really want to say in that. We held two truths, and this is something that my folks are probably tired of hearing me say. We had to be able to hold 2 thoughts in our mind at the same time, that we want to treat our students both as learners and as consumers. And if we can hold those 2 thoughts in our head at the same time, then how we speak to students and employees and our external community becomes important. So students need to understand how to access resources of the institution, understand how you're going to be able to take courses, what we can do to support them. But as consumers, they need to understand our pay mechanisms. They need us to make decisions early so they can be planful about that. They need us to understand enrollment patterns and trends so they can then have, we can offer a product to them that responds to those needs. And the external community needs to have that same thing. So we, and for the first time ever, we did a survey of our employees. The number one issue that employees often tell us, and students as well, is communication is a problem with an organization like ours. But we got this survey, we did it in the midst of the pandemic early on in August, and we had, I think, a 90% rating of favorable, high success by members of the college community about the way we've communicated. So if I could privilege anything in terms of our guiding principles, privilege anything about the assumptions that we worked around, communication is essential in this moment to be able to do that. And it requires coordination, collaboration, and multi-pronged approaches to do that.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Pollard. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for coming. Deb, do you have any last words before we send everyone off to the next sessions?
Just wanted to thank Dr. Pollard again and for a very engaging, valuable presentation and Q&A session. So thank you very much. And I think I know you probably didn't see the chat, but there were lots of thank yous and how inspirational your talk was. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. And I think we're ready to kick off the rest of the conference.
Take care.
Thank you.